welcome today with Kevin D. Turner, who is one of my go-to people for LinkedIn questions, like a lot of us. And we've been just chatting even in advance some of the things that we see going on. And one of the challenges that a lot of us have is the whole concerns about being hacked and people being taken off the platform, and also just the whole idea of what's going on with LinkedIn. And I think the first question I asked you was all these releases this year, however you want to define them. It's
Hmm.
maddening. And I think I always kind of look at it as we're all doing A/B testing on things, and we're testing things out, and that's both good and bad. I mean, it's good to be part of it, but it's bad when one has it and another doesn't have it. I'm sure that you can relate to that from what you're seeing, right? Because you're trying to keep track of all this stuff.
Well, absolutely. This is our biggest year as far as the amount of changes. There's not
Hmm.
been anything that's really been kind of earth shattering yet, I don't think, in the sense of like when we've had the complete profile redesigns, right? That threw everybody for a loop.
Right.
We got over it, but now it's been more kind of micro pieces and lots of them. So we're at over 130 actual features that have come in 2023, and then there's probably 30 or so changes, updates, move things around on the screen, right? So you got to find them again. Those are continuing, and then there's these crazy little beta tests that they keep doing, and they're confusing people. So, it has been one of those years. I even now have to go back to the list when
Hmm.
somebody says, "Is this new?" And I'm like, I think we did that already. And I'll go all the way back. I'll do the search for the last couple of, and I'll find it sometimes. Sometimes I don't. So then we
Right.
say it's new, right? And to me, it's fascinating that it's gotten that complicated.
Well, even what I was mentioning before the call with John Asperian, the idea of having an additional drop down now for scheduling a meeting or something as a premium, and I think it may be a tweaking of text, but just the idea that when someone finds it out about it, they let everyone know about it, or we let you know, because you're the closest thing to a repository that we have with all this stuff.
And that's really, I started it for myself, which is
Right.
terrible, right? Because I wanted to keep track of all this stuff, and I thought, well, why keep it to me? Open it up. And the other thing I did, and I don't know if anybody else really did this before, was give credit, right? I give
Yeah.
credit. If you look at the list, it's not about me,
Right.
right? At least half that stuff came from somebody else.
Mhm.
And most people out there that are sharing this information, they pretend like they discovered it. I wouldn't do that, because what that does is nobody brings it to you then, right?
Right.
And so the way LinkedIn rollouts are, and that's what I don't think everybody understands, is this massive platform that's LinkedIn. If they came out with a feature and they gave it to everybody, and you know how bad some of the features are when they come out, and the whole platform collapsed for 3 days,
Right.
would we be happy with them?
Well,
Probably not. We'd say,
no.
don't do that ever again.
Right.
And so they do it in this randomized system. It's 5 waves.
Hmm.
You're randomly selected for the most part, and the waves are timed so that they can look at that and say, okay, this first group went in there, everything worked pretty smooth except for A, B, and C. Let's fix that. Second group goes, right, and they improve it. What that keeps is from blowing up the whole platform.
Right.
But what it does do is a lot of people will kind of go out there and say, "Oh, I've got the latest, greatest. It's given me such an advantage," and everybody else feels bad, right?
See, what I wonder about is when things happen and we find things, whoever it is there, how does LinkedIn know what's going on in terms of determining, like, as a next step? Like, you do a release and then there's always questions, or you have maintenance, or however you want to define it. So what's the way that LinkedIn knows? Because the comments that we get sometimes make no sense. So and sometimes they'll actually pull back on a release or something based on what we're seeing. So do you have any idea how that process would work?
Well, there's a couple things that go on. Almost everything that rolls out has at least a group of beta testers
Okay.
in that first wave, right? So about half that first wave is randomized, and
Hmm.
the other portion is beta testers that they know and trust. And
Okay.
I've right now, I think I'm somewhere in the mid 20s as far as beta testing, uh, as far as features. They know those people, And so when they roll that out, they usually, have those people giving feedback immediately. They've now started setting up groups where the feedback is much more
Right.
active, right? Before it was kind of fill out a form after a week of using it. That was too slow. So they're getting better at gaining that feedback and then making adjustments. And I think that's, I think one of the best things that they've done there is they kind of put the ego in the back, right?
Mhm.
We really want to get this stuff right. Now, they sometimes make strange decisions,
Mhm.
and I don't think they give us the honest answer, right?
Right.
When they say something like profile videos were removed because people thought they were too complicated and not enough people use them,
Mhm.
right? I think the real reason that not enough people use them is not enough people do video, right?
Right.
It's like you freeze up. I don't want to do a video yet, but who was using them are these kind of like apex users, right? That they want to be on LinkedIn. They want to do this stuff out all the way, and they loved that feature. So to me, that should never have been pulled for a small use community. It should have been seen as something strategic for
Mhm.
this very unique community that really, really supports LinkedIn. And so when they come out and say, well, nobody used it, so we got rid of it, that
Mhm.
offends all those people who loved it, right? And put their heart and soul into it. Some people even created businesses around building profile videos with people. I mean,
Right.
and then just to kind of take it away and say nobody wanted it, so we got rid of it. It's not the true answer.
Right. I think when I
That
was
is
I,
frustrating.
I was involved with the events rollout a while ago,
Mhm.
when they were testing doing events to company pages, and even before that with individual. And there were so many things a lot of us requested it seemed like common sense. And we still have the group that's there. For example, we have to create a new event all the time. There's no such thing as
Mhm.
a recurring event. I have a recurring event. I would love to have the mechanism, not
Oh
just to
yeah.
create the recurring event, but to have the same people invited back again and again instead of having to redo this process. And everyone thought it was a good idea. And putting on my IT hat now, I don't think it's that difficult to do, but I think what happens is they get caught up in the next shiny toy, and they
Mhm.
don't think about going back to something because they're just kind of focusing on the future. So I think that's one of the missteps. You have all these features, and you need to have people who are looking at them and trying to make them better, whether it's enhancement or something else.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
something I think I'd
I
love to
did
see.
hear internally that, and this started about 3 years ago, Microsoft had a new feature quota for LinkedIn.
Right.
And so, as the owners of LinkedIn, they said, we want this site to improve. And 3 or 4 years ago, it needed some improvements, right? It
Yeah.
needed some change. It had been kind of stagnant for a while. And they set that up. It was 25 a quarter.
Hmm.
That's pretty aggressive. But LinkedIn said, okay, we can do that. We can do 25 a quarter. Well, if you're only being rated on what's new, you're never going to go back and fix what's old,
Right.
right? Because I don't get bonus for that, right?
No.
I'm not going to go fix messaging because messaging isn't a new feature. It's an old feature and it works
Right.
well enough. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to come up with something else, or maybe I'm going to come up with a component that sticks onto messaging that I can call a new feature. And that's what they've done. And that is just purely based on the fact that they had to produce that much. Now, if Microsoft had been, I think, better in setting their KPIs, that they may have come up with a different result, right?
Right. I
Yeah.
think also, as we all know, LinkedIn, they operate within different silos here. So different groups do one thing, another group does another thing, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. So, like if
Mhm.
you have an e-commerce website and you have stock that you have to keep track of, and you have to keep track of purchases, and you have to keep track of returns, and you have to keep track of all that, that's one fluid process. On LinkedIn, even though there's one component process to these things or one user use case or user story, each group does its own thing and they don't actually interact with the others to see what the ramifications are. I've seen that firsthand. I'm sure
Oh
you've
yeah.
seen that firsthand. They just don't for whatever reason.
And a lot of big companies are that way.
Yeah.
It's not the smartest way to operate, but a lot of companies do that because they think if they each have their own area that they'll come up with challenges to the other group. Like mobile, if mobile
Mhm.
creates something, well then desktop's going to want to mirror it instead of saying you guys get together and come up with this together so it works on both the same way. That's just a different strategy. It's never been LinkedIn's strategy to do that. They let these teams kind of create and move forward, and they don't have a lot of conversation.
No, I mean, you could do multiple mobile apps, perhaps,
Yeah.
or something. And it's not in their DNA. I mean, we all chat about this from a wish list standpoint. It's our goal when we talk about this to really figure out the platform the best way possible. And there's a lot of good changes. We just talked before about, even with premium, how they're rolling out things to make premium that much more relevant, whether it's the actively hiring that's coming out, and I think other things as well. I think that's something which I'm happy to see, because I get one question all the time: basic or premium? Can I
Yeah.
get by on basic? Do I really need premium? And usually my answer is, yeah, you can get by on basic because you're probably not utilizing it to the best of your ability. But
if you haven't maxed that out, why pay for something you're not going to max out either?
Right.
Yeah. But I think it's smart in the sense that they're doing more of that. I know some people are offended that, oh, it's only a premium feature and that's going to give premium advantage. LinkedIn's a business.
Yeah.
They've got to make money. They do make money. Actually, they're one of the only wildly profitable social media platforms since almost day one.
Right. So just a couple of comments here, Dean. Again, just like enterprises do a release of apps, LinkedIn releases the pilot groups and then the slow roll. We just don't know. And again, since LinkedIn is not even necessarily driven by location, it could be just one specific server of people, and you don't even know who's on that server per se.
And they are localizing a lot of offerings as well.
Right.
So, that is kind of another confusing piece. Why does Brazil was the first to get profile video?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they get profile video and not the US and not Europe and not, so it's interesting in that sense that they do segment this stuff to test it.
So this was something that a lot of us were talking about: the recent removal and return of locations on profiles. For those of you that aren't aware, when a little while ago, when you had your profile, they were taking off your actual location on the profile. Now,
plus education and
right.
current company. And you know what the reasoning behind it was?
No.
If somebody were to send you an invite, then you looked at it and said, oh, I don't want anybody from Bangladesh in my network, or I don't want anybody from Exxon because that's an oil company, right? Or I don't want anybody who went to that school because they're my rival. You've created a system that promotes the ability to have a bias. And so they thought, well, what we'll do, even playing field, we take those off, and somebody will send you an invite and you've got to accept it on the invite alone. Problem is they've left the invites to basically default to blank. And so you get this blank invite, you get to the profile, and there's not enough information in that top card for you to really start making good decisions.
Not only that, but if you're still having the max out of 30,000 connections, which again, that's another relic, and you're asking us to connect with people and we max out because we've had to make a decision of connecting with someone based on not enough information, what is that saying? Now, my main thing is follow for that reason. I don't know that I'm ever going to get to 30,000. I don't think I want to, but I think that's a very arbitrary number. And even if LinkedIn had some formula or some algorithm to determine that you might get more based on maybe percent accepted.
No, there actually is an algorithm to it. There is a formula to it. If you think of LinkedIn, it's all based on 6 degrees of separation, right?
Okay.
Within 6 handshakes, you can meet anybody in the world. The more first handshakes you have, the less of the other 5 you need. So if you had a large population in your first group, your first level connections, you won't need as many to get to the end. And LinkedIn knows that. If you have 30,000 first level connections and they're more broad based, right? Not zeroed into, pharmacy or something like that. They're more broad based. You should have access for free to 25% of the LinkedIn database at 30,000. Well, if I let you have 50,000, now that equation, you're going to go almost half of LinkedIn's database. How do I sell you Sales Navigator? How do I sell you Recruiter, right? How do I sell you Premium that might have some of these little extra access points? And so it goes back to LinkedIn's a business. So that 6 degrees of separation actually sets up what that equation is. And one of the things I like to do, if you ever want to wonder how far does my current network reach? If you go into the search box, you take all your vowels, right? A, E, I, O, U, and Y. In between each one of those vowels, you give it a space, you do capital O, capital R between each one.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to search, what that's going to do is that's going to give you your network reach. How far does your network reach to the third level? And you'll see that number. Right now, I've got, I think, 22,000 first levels, and I'm getting access to, I think it's 280 million of the LinkedIn network. That's my full network extent. And then you can go in there and you can actually cut it down to first level, second level, third level, right? That's kind of neat that you can get in there and see that. You can see that reach. And so you can see why they stop you at 30,000, because again, makes it hard to sell all these premium features. You know, if I can get access to what I want. Now, if you focus your network, let's say I'm a recruiter and I focus my network on pharmaceutical recruitment, right? And so every player in there, I might not even need 30,000 to be able to access everybody in that network.
So
that's why they're like, okay, we're getting into our revenue stream, so we've got to give limits to that.
So let me ask you this, and this is just to paraphrase. What are some of the new features and changes that you think are the best ones, or the things that are something that you're most excited about? Because you've seen them all, or a lot of them, and I know one of the things. I mean, I love some of the things from a job seeker perspective. But is there anything specific that you find that more than anything else, whether, because it's been now, 9 months already in the current year?
Yeah. You know, the one that I like the most is Search Alert, where you
Okay.
can go into the search box, right? Once you've completed a search and you've got results, there should be a bell that shows up, right? And you can click that bell and save 10 searches. Now, if you do it in the sense of a pure Boolean, where you've got the ands, capital A and Ds, you can basically mirror all your filter options. So you can really, you know, do anything from the latest sales manager job in Detroit.
Okay.
Right. So you can do that and save that as a bell, and it's going to give you that and feed that to you. You can do the same thing with hashtags. I know you and I talked about this, I think, earlier. Right. The current hashtag system within LinkedIn, it's all small letters, right? And if you search with capital letters, it will reduce it to small letters. So when you save the bell, you want to save it in all smalls, which is not inclusive in the sense of, you know, the way you might want to post that particular hashtag. But that, to me, I love that feature because it gives us a little more control. Right? The other thing that, and technically it's half a feature, and that is creating your own kind of favorite content creators filter, right? So you go through the filter process, you pick a time frame that you want to see. I usually go last 24 hours because I'm very active. I only want it from these certain individuals, right? And bookmark that.
Yes.
You know, after you've done your search result, bookmark that, name that bookmark, and go back to it. I've got a YouTube video on it. That is the best control you can have of your feed. And what's really cool about it is there are no ads, right? So you kind of circumvent LinkedIn's ad. Right. It will not throw off LinkedIn's algorithm that detects automation for a couple of reasons. It never opens up a profile. That's what the automation is looking for, people scraping profiles, right? Nobody really scrapes content. And it is pulling it one at a time in the feed format, not in a serve of tabs. So it gets around this whole kind of process of identifying it as automation, so you don't get shut down by using it, and you really get only what you want. Now, I use that every day. And then I also go to my feed, and I use latest, because I don't like LinkedIn's algorithm that tells me what I should see, because it usually stuff I've already seen or not interested in for some reason. I go to the latest. So I use those two to, I think, keep up with what I want to keep up with and give me more control. So I'm maybe wasting less time scrolling, right? And it's more
Right.
focused.
I
So
also do
I
a
like
lot
that
of,
kind of a half feature, half
right.
browser use.
I go to my, I switch from relevant to most recent a lot of
Mhm.
times with my content. Again, I don't know what the definition is of relevant, but if I want to be able to engage, that's a lot easier for me. One thing which totally frustrates a lot of us is this whole reporting and blocking. I get so many invitations, so many messages
Mhm.
from fake profiles, people that aren't real. I will report and block. I will claim that it's spam or whatever it is, and I will get it's not from LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
I'll still do it anyway. Um, but is there a best practice? Like, because we all get all these.
Oh
So
yeah.
is there a best way to go about it?
It is about LinkedIn getting a certain number of reports on a profile. So if one person reported your profile because they didn't like it, whatever it
Right.
is, or they didn't like me, and so they reported me, that's not going to probably trigger anything from LinkedIn. They're going to send the bot out to look. The bot's not going to find anything, right? And say it doesn't go against, it doesn't violate anything. If they get 5 reports within a 24-hour period, then they put a human on it.
Mm-hmm.
And a human sometimes will find it, right? To me, the problem still exists that we can't tell them what we're reporting it about, right? So if it's spam or if it's, a fake profile or anything, I'd like to be able to give them a definition. Say, this is fake because this picture's used 50 times on 50 different profiles, right? Those kind of things to help them make a better decision when it
I'd
gets
like
to.
to be able to attach a picture. Like
Yeah.
I will do that sometimes on Twitter when I do something. Give me the ability to send you what I'm referring to.
Oh yeah, and you could actually, mark it up and everything else and send that to them. And they go like, I get that, right? But again, they will trigger on number of. So if you have somebody who is really offensive, get a group of people together. I hate to say it, it's a spike pod, if anything, right? But you can shut down fake accounts that way. And I think at this point we're kind of in full combat with those fake accounts, which is one of the reasons, LinkedIn's hired some very expensive individuals to get after fakes. I think they're really doing a good job of getting after the fakes. They're getting after them so hard, they're now putting the pressure on those kind of nefarious people that were running these fakes to go in and try to steal accounts. And you and I were talking about it. That's
Right.
a big thing that's happening right now. Good people, you, me, Brenda, John, we're getting all of a sudden thrown out of LinkedIn. We're in jail, right?
Yep.
People think, wow, everything of theirs just disappeared. They must be naughty, right? It has nothing to do with it. It's the fact that somebody saw and said, okay, Kenneth's got a great profile. He's got a great network. I'd like to own that, steal it, and use it for nefarious reasons. So I'm going to brute force attack his account and try as many password combinations as I can. And LinkedIn was dumb in the sense that they had us set up, by email. And, that's not that hard to figure out. So all I got to figure out now is the password. So LinkedIn decided within 10 attempts in a certain amount of time, they're just going to lock that profile down completely. So it then becomes restricted, and hopefully the hacker moves on, right, to the next one. It's all botted, so they're going to move on. And that's how LinkedIn is protecting. And it's also how LinkedIn now is getting people to realize, yeah, you have to have 2-step verification on there. And the best 2-step verification right now is the LinkedIn app verification, where you're actually verifying within LinkedIn on your mobile app, not SMS. SMS has been proven to be very soft security wise. And then some of the ads out there, like the Google app and stuff like that, they've been compromised as well. But the LinkedIn app, that's probably your safest bet to make that connectivity.
So we're gonna answer David's question. How do you know if a LinkedIn profile is fake? Well,
Some of them are obvious, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
look, some of them you can tell by the picture right off the bat.
Mhm,
You can
mhm.
tell by the summary. You can tell about the work history that it doesn't match up. You can tell about the connections. Um,
They
and
always went like top schools, right? Top companies. They're always chairman of the board at
right,
Exxon, right? And they went to Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and just they're almost magical the way they're built in the sense that they're ridiculous. So those are easy to detect.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the same person, quote unquote, send me a connection, actually a message, and it's the same background information. It's different people. And, um, you know, I understand why. I just wish they wouldn't. And I think the challenge is this: it's yes, you want to be um, honest about things, but at the same time, you're dealing with a bot. You're dealing with, and I've always wondered from a LinkedIn perspective, there are so many people on this platform that pitch automation, so many companies that pitch automation, so many tools that pitch automation. And maybe the caveat is, well, if you get caught, it's not our fault. But at the same time, it sets up a kind of a confusing message.
It does, and there's actually there is a marketing link that you can go to and see what automation is approved for LinkedIn. Now, what is crazy is you look at that list. There's only 140 companies out there that make product for LinkedIn that LinkedIn has approved in their process. Those aren't the ones you're seeing. The ones you're seeing are like, all sorts of stuff. They've got a LinkedIn page. They've got usually a YouTube channel that has the videos on it that shows all how they abuse LinkedIn's system, but never get you in trouble, right? They exist. You can report those to LinkedIn and they don't get after them fast enough. But I think that's changing because I've been able to shut down a little over 30 companies based on that, but they come right back. It's so easy to come back into LinkedIn, new email, set up a new business page, set up a new profile, begin again, right? And they're doing it. And so it's just really hard to patrol in that sense. But I think LinkedIn's getting a lot better. And because they are getting better is why we're getting that pressure of this kind of brute force attack. So I think everybody's got to expect to get locked out once in a while now.
And this is an inside joke, sort of. I get so many requests for PMP certification, one right after the other. I probably get 4 or 5 a day. And it's maddening. I actually did a post. I do it just about every week. I call it my LinkedIn Hall of Shame, and it's all different things. And the other thing is someone reached out to me thinking it was me, but it wasn't. It was a different Kenneth Lang. And the whole email and everything mentioned everything about the background, and it wasn't me. And this person still tried and tried and tried. And I think, I'm happy LinkedIn is removing connections and followers. I'm happy they're doing something. I think, again, Dean mentioned that he did an image search for the profile picture. Why don't you, because this is good about bookmarking and the process, because I do this a lot too. I have over time, when this rolled out, there are my 9, 10, however many people, and then other different types of tabs about how I'm going to reach out to people. So can you go through the steps again? How that would work?
Sure. Yeah, it starts with the search box, right? If you want to find content, what people are publishing, right, you do a content search, right? Then the next thing I always pick is the time frame. I'm active every day, so I pick the last 24 hours. That way, when I click on it, it's just going to give me what's done in the last 24 hours, so it's fresh. Right? You could do last week, that kind of stuff, whatever works for you. And then you go to the people tab, right? Then you start typing in the people. As you type them in, they'll pop up, just like if you're mentioning them or tagging them, right? It pops up, you click it, they become part of that list. I have a couple of lists that have over 100, one has over 120 people in it, right? And I can go to that list when I want to. Those are more towards old clients. So there doesn't seem to be a limitation in that sense. So, but once you get that search set up, you then, complete the search. So you get the results. And at that point, what you do is you go within your browser. All browsers have the ability to bookmark.
Yes.
Right? Depends on your browser. I've got 7 browsers on my thing, and each one of them is a little bit different, but it's usually up in the right-hand corner. There's an icon that's either a more icon of some sort. And somewhere in there, it's going to say, save this page as a browser, save this tab as a browser is actually better. And what that does is it actually saves the code that LinkedIn used to generate that search. What's really neat is, let's say you use that and you go to that page again and you decide, I want to add somebody, right? You can actually add someone in that process because it's already got the code there. You can add them in as an individual. And then the next time you go in, you're going to have that additional individual, or you can minus people as well. Right. That's kind of neat. But
I do that with some of my demos now, because I do a lot of demos. I mean, I'll talk about it and I'll say, instead of having to walk through the steps to do it, I'll have it saved and I'll say, look what I just did.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, for example, I'll do a thing about like, I'm hiring, or we're hiring, or just some keywords, just to say, this is how you can find that information based on a text thing, because, or however it is. And it's an aha moment. It was when it took a little while to set it up, but it was definitely worth it.
Oh yeah. And in the long run, it makes life a lot better. And I still go to the live feed, because you will get things that surprise you, right? When you're using the live feed in that sense, you'll get things you never thought about, people you never knew existed. And so it's good to stay fresh, right?
Well,
do a little bit of both.
I bookmark all my articles too, like even with the feed, and you can get the URLs. I have a bookmark for my articles from all different time frames, because like a lot of us, we kind of reuse some of our content in different ways. So you can't scroll through the feed that easily to find out what your content is. It'd be like a fool's errand. And yes, you can download it with the URLs, but it's still not the same.
No, it is nice, especially if it's stuff that you consistently go to, right, for information. It's great to keep them in bookmarks.
I agree. I think for me also, I think there's a lot of missed opportunities. I mean, for me, when I look at LinkedIn, my whole thing nowadays is talking about using it as a search engine instead of just the idea of, I mean, create the profile. There's a lot of great information out there how to do it, but it's about using the tool in a way possible. I think being part of the collaborator group is both good and bad. It's good because you see what they're doing. It's bad because in some cases you see how they're doing it and you don't want to kind of rub them the wrong way.
Yeah, that's always a delicate dance, isn't it, when you're dealing with them?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we all want to put everything in the best light, but sometimes they don't always think through stuff.
No, and they've got different pressures that we don't have, right?
No, I mean,
we see things from the outside, how we would use that. They see things in a different way, and some of the pressures that they have to do certain things certain ways. They're never going to tell us that, right? But we know that exists, and we've been there with our own businesses, employments, where we can't do certain things because the company says you're not allowed to do that, never do that, or you're out of here. And those things exist.
We love LinkedIn, and John Esperian and a lot of others. We have this wish list of things we would love to see them do, whether they can do them or not. All don't know, but it's just the goal is to make it the best platform possible, because we know they can't do everything.
Well, and we probably should add in the comments below, there are 2 links that everybody should know. One actually goes to Microsoft. It's kind of like telling mom on your brother, right? Goes to Microsoft, says, Mom, look what LinkedIn's doing. I don't like that. Can we do it this way? And then sometimes Microsoft goes and tells your brother to do it better. That works. And then the other one, no matter what you're going for, it's always going to direct it to the product lead of whatever you mention. And that goes right to LinkedIn. Those 2 links are phenomenal, especially when something is frustrating someone, or they really want to see it change, or they see an issue. Get people together, rally the forces, right? You get 30, 50 people to jump in and fill those forms out. It changes things. That is how the dropping of the location, that's the reason location came back. That's the reason that beta failed.
Yeah.
Because they had so many people filling out that form going, this is absolutely ridiculous, right? And that's how you make change.
I would love to see them bring back the pinned posts.
I think I send something to Tammy Odesi at least once a month because she promised she would.
Okay.
It's never happened. So
Right. And we will put in the links that we're referring to after the chat. We can't add this actually to the chat now, but either Kevin or I will put that in, because I do believe to some extent, I mean, Find Nearby was another one of my personal favorites to demonstrate.
I loved it. It had some privacy issues in other countries.
Right.
Even some technically here in the U.S. There was a lawsuit, a stalker lawsuit based on it, that somebody used it to stalk somebody within a building. So you can kind of see sometimes really good features can be used the wrong way, right? And that's sometimes why they go away. And it's a shame when it happens.
Even the email address, you used to be able to download email addresses on your contacts, and you would have to opt in now. And I understand, again, it's probably security and stalking and all that stuff, but that was a wonderful thing to have. Although I think they've changed some of the fields on when you download.
It was wonderful for you and I to have, right?
Yeah.
But it was not good when Bob got it, and Bob sent out 50 emails a day to every one of those people. Right, within their network. And that was the problem. And what it really opened up was people who were scraping data and could gain access. Let's say I gain access to your account and I get every one of your friends' emails right in your network. And then I start spamming them, maybe even with nefarious links that do all sorts of bad things to their account. That's really why they pulled it down. It was such a security risk in that sense. Sure. And I think it's kind of a shame. I will place my content, my contact, on my profile. I do it in two different ways. I put it in my banner because it's not scrapable. If somebody wanted to write it down, I know a bot's not writing it down, right? If an individual wanted to write it down and send me an email or call me, they can. I'm okay with that, right? Then within the context of, let's say, the about section, I'll put it in there, but I'll parse it in different ways. So you put space before the and, space after the and, maybe space before the dot. That's no longer an email. Nobody's going to scrape that content, because if I said pick up anything, you'd have a bunch of junk content in your database if you were going to spam. So they go right past it. Same thing with using a +1 phone numbers with dots in between. It's not a phone number, doesn't fit the format. So they go right past it, but a human can see it and say, wow, I can copy that, take the space out, and send Kenneth an email. So there's still ways to get that functionality back that are safe, just a little more creative.
And we were talking before about the hashtags. Are they going away or not? And just to remind, there are so many hashtags out there now. And I think LinkedIn is probably doing a bit of a cleanup on top of everything else. Because if you got rid of hashtags at the same time, that was one of the premises of creator mode, to have hashtags, and the hashtags were going to be the ones you're going to select. I've changed a couple of mine over time. I don't know that a lot of people use searching for hashtags or do that. So I go back and forth if I want to include them in a post.
And it's interesting because often when we do hashtags ourselves, right, we want to be inclusive. So we use Pascal or Camel Case, so it is easier to read. And it's also easier for a page reader to read, right? Because then it looks at it as words, not letters. LinkedIn doesn't recognize that. Anytime you try to type in a hashtag, LinkedIn will always push you down to all lowercase. That's how the LinkedIn hashtag system works right now, all lowercase. Technically, when we've been putting out all these really nice Pascal, Camel Case hashtags in all our emails, they're not functional. LinkedIn's not recognizing them. They have to be pushed down to all lowercase. My understanding right now is LinkedIn's going through a revamp of hashtags, and it will come back with that more inclusive property of Pascal, Camel Case. That's going to be the standard. They already changed like a tiering level in hashtags. And technically they always had one. There used to be a hashtag page you could go to, right? If you saw a hashtag and it had a picture on it, that was one that LinkedIn created. If you saw the hashtag and it had the gray box, that meant somebody else created that one. People started following it, so they showed it. That's the tier 2, right? Now they've kind of got almost like a tier 3, and that's all our personalized hashtags that we all thought so much about, right? And you'll notice now if you start typing in your hashtag, it doesn't complete it for you. Even mine that I use, Keep Rocking LinkedIn, I have to type it all the way out because they're not going to let me have that as a drop down to select. So they're already, setting up these kind of tier levels of what the hashtags are. And my understanding is that's the transition point. And really, if you ask anybody, hashtags have not worked well on LinkedIn ever, right? I mean, if you go and do a hashtag search, you don't really get what you think you're going to get.
No.
Even with your own hashtag. So there was issues with it. And my understanding is they're saying, well, we got to take that code out and put new code in. We got to figure out what that's going to be. What is it going to do? And that is going to take a little bit of time because LinkedIn was never designed to do what it does today when it began, right? And so they've just been adding code. Some people call it spaghetti code, right? You pull one out, 4 things break. And so supposedly hashtag is pretty deep in the process. And I think there will be a transition point, and hopefully it's very short, but that's my understanding. That's what I'm hearing kind of inside, that it's transitioning to that more inclusive camel case Pascal hashtags, and there will still be tier levels of that.
Yeah, I think, you bring up a good point. I think there's a lot of code and a lot of levels to what's going on at LinkedIn. And I think what I miss is the ability to have some sort of communication process between LinkedIn. They were supposed to have a page where you could check on what's going on LinkedIn. A page. I don't know if that page still exists. Remember, there's a page. I'm talking about the customer, the LinkedIn, a page where you would be able to find out, is it up or is it down, and you could put content, whatever it was.
Well, the brilliance of that, if LinkedIn is down, how do you get to a page that's on LinkedIn? It's kind of like when they shipped out VCRs, right? Video home recording tape, and they gave you a tape on how to set your VCR up. It's not working. How do I put the tape in to see it, to know how to set it up? LinkedIn coming up with a page within its own site so that you could find out if the site was up. It's kind of foolish, kind of silly. It didn't do anything, right?
No, the workaround was, the URL was, I think, not specifically linkedin.com. There was a couple of things, but good luck trying to find it, and no one used it.
Well, and it never said anything.
No, exactly.
All clear, all good. All clear. And I was like, no, it's not. No, I think people gave up on it. It still exists. You can still go to it and it'll say the same thing. Everything's good.
Yeah, right? I know.
Everything's wonderful. Go back to work.
I mean, I've gone into the aspect there, the actual LinkedIn engineering blog a couple of times just to see what they're looking at. I mean, I don't understand a lot of it in general, but it gives me some frame of reference to what they're looking at.
I think that stuff's fascinating. And
yeah, me too.
I don't understand most of it, but I can get some of it. The other thing is looking up patents, LinkedIn patents, especially as they come out. If you search by month, you can find some patents that are kind of telling you the way things are going that are out there. And they're, to patentize them, they've got to make it public in that sense. So you can kind of see where things are headed. And there's a lot more AI coming.
Well, I've had AI suggest to me my title. I've had AI suggest to me my about section. I've had AI suggest to me what jobs I should apply for. I've had AI do everything for me, and it's based on what is on my profile, based on what it thinks I want to see.
Yeah. That's a lot of ifs, isn't it? A lot of moving parts. And now they're reviewing comments. That just came out just the other week, where if you use some language or terminology that's not appropriate, AI will flag it and say, I think you ought to rewrite that.
Really?
If you ever want to test it, use the word idiots in your comment. In any comment, just use idiots, and you'll get the pop-up box that says, we think you ought to rewrite that. So really? AI is even getting into how we behave on LinkedIn in the sense of calling us out and telling us to fix those things. I think that to me is fascinating. Now, don't actually publish that comment because it's giving you the option to change it. Put a different word in there, but it's a great way to test it. Just use that word idiots. and it will
Well,
throw that.
I remember in the beginning, I was asked to talk about networking in AI. And networking, I was thinking in terms of networking groups and networking events. And they
Mhm.
wanted me to talk about computer networking.
Yes.
I mean, as an example. And I was like, okay, I know what it
Yeah.
is. I
What
can't.
Wi-Fi router do you use during networking?
Exactly.
Right. It's like that was as smart as the AI was at the time.
Right.
And I don't think those editors were really paying as much attention to it when they were releasing the original articles, right? The collaborative articles. I think they're doing a little better now,
Hmm.
probably because that was brought up at a couple of meetings, so
Well,
probably embarrassed a few people.
the issue that we all have is still trying to figure out the best way to find stuff.
Mhm.
I have shortcuts and bookmarks as to where to find things so I can get to it quickly, but it shouldn't have to be that difficult. And
But could you imagine if you were new to the platform, brand new?
Mhm.
We've had some time here, right?
Oh
We
yeah,
kind of got our shortcuts. We kind of know maybe where it might be, where we could find it. Imagine if you're brand new and with just 130 plus big changes this year in the sense of features. I don't know how anybody comes into this platform and swims. It's like being thrown into the rapids in Colorado River. It's kind of crazy in that sense.
it's also hard from the standpoint that when we all do our training and we all work with people, we are constantly having to change what we say and do
Oh
because what
yeah.
was relevant 2 months ago is not relevant now.
How many times have you been in a training where you go and click on something and it's not there, or you click on something, you're like, "What is that?"
Yeah,
And
happened
you
to
try
all
not
of
to
us.
say that out loud, right? It happens constantly.
I mean, it's just. I mean, it keeps us busy, keeps us active.
Well, here's one thing I love knowing this, that there is a group of people inside LinkedIn
Mhm.
at kind of director, VP, different levels on down to product manager that are going to that new LinkedIn feature list to find out what their own company is doing.
Yeah,
Because they don't tell them, because then they might tell somebody else like me, right? Who
right.
will write about it before it's time. And then, if they end up pulling it back, then they only mess up the beta group or the first wave. They're so secretive about this stuff. And to me, I don't get it. I like how like YouTube does things. If you're producing on YouTube, every Wednesday they have a video that says what's new. And they
Right.
tell you what's new. And they're like, you may or may not have this. It may break. It may do this. It may do that. But they tell you right then and there. There's no guessing. You know, they're so upfront about it. It's almost ridiculous how upfront they are. But that you give them a lot of slack because of it. If LinkedIn took the same approach, just tell us, right? Be transparent. They would catch very little heat for it, even if it didn't work.
Well, I think the challenge is that we do what we can as trainers and getting the word out because people ask us questions all the time.
Mhm.
And AI is something which is not going away. And from my experience with the collaborative articles, it's getting a little better
Yeah.
because now the article Q&A are a little more relevant to what it was before. But what I have found is the more people that collaborate on an article, the better it will become. Because if you
Mhm.
put something out and no one collaborates, because that's where they're getting their information from. It's all of us doing it. I mean, our concerns as individuals is we had two questions about. One is how do you know if it's relevant, good content or now? Is there a way to like say this isn't even correct? And what are you going to do about it? I mean, right now it's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
kumbaya, this is all great, we're all in this together. Well, what's to stop someone from putting the wrong information there?
And that happens. That happens with even Chat GTP. If you
Yeah.
think about it, it was released on the internet to go learn.
Hmm.
And it learned good things and bad things. It
Yeah.
learned truthful things and not truthful things. The one thing about AI is it does not know what the truth is. It doesn't
Right.
have any way of measuring it. All it knows is this is data I collected and I can reuse. So it could be absolutely incorrect. What it tries to do is if enough say this same thing, then it must be more true. That's not always the case on the internet.
No, 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 no.
But that's how it all functions. I always say that AI can be a great muse, right? but it's not a complete artist.
No.
And as any muse can be, they can get you in as much trouble as they can get you into being creative, right? Muses aren't always good.
Well, the information on there, some of those questions are old because they're taking historical information. So they're not even talking about real-time stuff. So it might have been relevant before. So a lot of us look at these articles and roll our eyes, and we're not even going to get involved because what is the point of perpetuating something which isn't relevant anymore?
You know, half of my collaborative comments go against the article.
Me too. Well, that's what's starting to happen with me.
And I remember something about, when do you put references, available on your resume? They're suggesting that. And I'm like, you don't. You don't put that. That's assumed, right? If you're putting that on there, you're telling them you're over 50. Right. You don't do that. And that got good response. So sometimes countering what they have is just as important as, if you agree with it. I think sometimes bringing out that other viewpoint is what makes that better. And I think that's why those articles are getting better.
Yes. So Kevin, this has been a great chat today. We could be talking for ever and ever and ever, but I'm going to put in the chat. I'm going to follow up with as many of you as I can. You are our go-to person with every LinkedIn change that is out there and then some. And I know I'm appreciative of it. And I know a lot of people are too, because
I appreciate everybody who helps me. I couldn't do it alone. I always say it is a tribe of eagle eyes and sharing hearts that help get that list together. I just happen to be the person who kind of collects it all and defines it, maybe makes gifts for it, right? But I can't do it alone. Nobody can. No. And that's why it's there, and use it, right? Use it to your best benefit.
So I want to thank everyone for attending today. Have a great day. We will be back here next week, Tuesday at 1, Kevin. Yes, we are both go-to people. Yes, we certainly are. So are there any LinkedIn changes to either job search or profile capabilities that can be shared? There are a bunch, which we will, Michelle, I'll put some comments when I follow up later on in the post when I do this, but I want to thank you guys all very much for coming, and have a great day. And I'm going to end the stream now.